I think that people should be making more of this authentic content. So, and I think that a lot of content exists purely to signal seriousness. And I think Samsung is a great example of the yes of what you should be doing, right? So they're not talking about the specs of the product that created this and how their labs are the most pure, and everything's just the technology is up to speed, right? That's not an actual day-to-day experience that most people are having. And I think that many brands still haven't made that leap from signaling seriousness to actually connecting to people's lived experience. We're still getting this, especially in the social impact sphere, right? We're getting polished reports, formal messaging that stays on brand, and these updates that feel like they're not really that meaningful. So I think that the content that people should be making is really human and it's really direct.
All right, well, welcome everybody back to the Full Battery Media Podcast. I'm Sean. I'm your host, and it is lovely to meet all of you today. And I have an awesome guest with me. And would you like to tell people who you are and a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me, Sean. I'm really excited for this conversation, first off. My name's Saralynn Finn. I'm a digital marketing leader who helps organizations and businesses grow their audiences and impact. I've had a pretty non-traditional path to this career that's included running a horse ranch and a healthcare nonprofit, among other experiences. But for the last 9 years or so, my focus has been on helping audiences understand how their purpose and mission connects to organizations' work and messages.
That's awesome. Because whether people realize it or not, we have entered a very new world of communications and marketing and all of that. It used to be, I remember growing up and seeing these well-planned, crafted marketing campaigns that you would see, that would be these big ad budgets. But now it's much more authentic. It's much more organic. And, people are able to really, and it also has reduced the barrier for people to enter certain markets, which is really awesome that you get this ability for the corner shop to be able to go and compete with some of the big people out there. Because there's this one guy that I follow, and I just I don't like all his videos, but I am fascinated at his ability to just play the marketing game so well. Is Tony. He does these light videos, and he's this master of the hook. And he is the guy, he's from China, and he does these light videos, and it's like he pops in. Now, what's fascinating to me about the whole situation, whether you like his videos or not, because his videos are a little controversial, is the fact that some guy in China was able to make advertisements and not tap into markets globally. Like, it's a small vendor that before you would never be able to access different markets around the world, And
the democratization of technology is the biggest revolution. If you think about it, literally 100 years ago, a camera was the size of my desk and cost how much to make. And now we have these little things in our pocketses as little hobbitses that can go around and look at the shiny things that we find and tell everyone about them.
Yes, right. And that was one of the things too. Like I teach still at a university. I do classes in communications and content creation. And one of my students was like, I can't make a film, Professor Trace, because I don't have a great camera. And I was like, what you have in your pocket right now is better than what I had when I was going through university. And that's like the nicest camera in the film department was nowhere near as good as your iPhone. Yeah. And it's like there are these people that are making movies on iPhones like right now, and they're phenomenal. I remember there was this one video that I saw. I don't know why it got taken down, but it was filmed by the stunt coordinator, I believe, from the John Wick movies, and it was a snowball fight. It was an advertisement a couple years ago. It was hands down better than most movies I've ever seen, and it was filmed on an iPhone. And
Yeah.
the pace that technology is enabling us to do things is powerful. Let me ask you this. I put together some questions for you. You've got a really diverse background. I want to hear about that. But I want to start in with asking a theory question. If most people had to delete 80% of the content they make, what should actually stay? What should we actually be doing?
Yeah. So coming from a really mission-driven social impact background with the majority of my communications, don't get me wrong, I've worked for some heavy hitters in, the entertainment industry, and I've worked for-profit things. But if we're talking social impact, I think that a lot of content doesn't focus on helping people feel less confused and more
Oh,
capable
yes.
of acting. And so I'm going to say 80% doesn't do that. And we want to be shifting that balance to 80% of our content helps people understand what is happening right now. Why does it matter? Where do I fit into that? And what is my best next step in interacting with this issue? So, when I worked doing vote by mail messaging in 2020, I was helping jurisdictions craft their messaging, but then I was also doing some direct to the public messaging. And that was a really easy time. People had a lot of questions. It was a really easy time in terms of people had really clear questions and they had really clear next steps that we wanted to help them take, which was to access voting during the pandemic. And the content, we did a lot of different kinds of content. We experimented, and the things that performed the best were the things that answered the burning questions that people had and then gave them tangible next steps. And I think social impact marketing, of course, it's about persuasion. All marketing is about persuasion to some degree, but there's also an aspect of sense making that respects our audiences. And if you're not helping them understand the world around them, then your content needs to go. And I think that also connects to for-profit and, enterprise marketing.
I love that. One of the things that you touched on there that I want to kind of tap into and expound upon, I love that word,
Mhm.
is what you're talking about, when there is a cause and something. Right now, I see things on TV that really frustrate me. I won't dive into politics, but there's a lot of stuff happening that I am not okay with.
Yeah.
But one of the things that's really challenging for me is I don't know what to do. And many people don't. And so you see stuff, and it's great to have a video of people getting angry and then showing anger and showing injustice, but what can we do about it? And I think that the idea of empowering people is really, it's like if I studied medicine. I did a lot of different things, but if I studied
I know.
medicine,
I think we're kind of similar in that, a
right?
little jack of all tradesy, have
100%.
curiosity that goes everywhere and doesn't behave.
I went to graduate school and studied Chinese medicine, and I'm still finishing my doctorate in Chinese medicine, but I also have a financial
That's my
podcast.
dream for my retirement is to just do Chinese medicine.
I love it. Yeah, if you want to, I actually do the podcast for a great university in Los Angeles, and I can introduce you later on.
Very cool.
Yeah. And one of the things that I found there is when we had people who come to us and they would, be wanting to get help with a health condition. And you can sit there and scare them for days. You can sit there and talk about the problem for days, or you can give them things they can take action on. And I try to tell people, and I tell all of my students this, that you should always look at content as a type of education. Whether you're educating people about how fun your product is, you're educating people about how it can help them, or whatever it is that you're doing. Right now, I am 100% convinced that it is a corporate campaign masquerading as an influencer. The Dr. Pepper guy. Have you seen this?
I haven't.
You got to look it up. So
Okay.
all of these streamers, there's this guy that just shows up at people's streams at the red carpet. He just shows up everywhere, pulls out a can of Dr. Pepper, hands it to people, and then just walks off. And everyone's like, dude, where? That's that guy. That's the Dr. Pepper guy. He just keeps popping into all of these streamer streams. He's all over the place. And like now people are starting to go like, dude, this guy is everywhere. It has to be like, this has to be either he started doing this for fun and Dr. Pepper's like, yeah, dude, we'll help you run with this. Or it's been a whole Dr. Pepper thing the whole time. But like one of the things that I sat there and I was talking to my wife about how genius this is I said, they're educating. And like, well, she's like, what are they teaching people? They're teaching people that Dr. Pepper's fun. It's fun. And like, it's just, you don't even have to drink it. It's like associated with fun and mystery and excitement. And, you know, people see this guy and they get excited. Well, that's associating the brand with excitement. And I was just like, that's genius because their ad spend on this guy is got to be tiny. They're just flying him places and walking into streams, you know, and like handing people a cup. Man, and like, that's the idea is like, this new way of thinking, the democratization of media isn't just for smaller companies. Even big brands can sit there and go, dude, we can do stuff that's creative. But with AI now, people get more flexibility. But I also feel like people are seeking out and yearning for more real, authentic content at the same time.
100%. 100%. I think that, you know, authenticity is built into our DNA, right? As primal hunter-gatherers, we had to decide if a person or a situation was safe in an instant, if it was real, if we could trust it. And so I think that like actually trustworthy content that feels authentic is the key here. And that if you're working with a brand that is a little afraid of authenticity, I understand, right? It's all very crafted, and this new democratization of media is scary for big brands that have this persona. And oh my gosh, we're giving our brand to this other human to now represent and embody, and it's not highly controlled. The whole influencer world that now exists is really hard, especially for social impact organizations who are somewhat beholden to unfair standards. I'd like to just, you know, throw out there as a hot take. We're all human, even institutions are human and err. But yeah, I think that authenticity is actually what matters more than polish, right? It's actually what lands. And that people are going to be craving that more and more as AI infiltrates more aspects of our culture and our day-to-day.
I think so as well. I think that one of the things that I'm seeing is like people around me are I have a media company that does lots of videos for people and we do reels and stuff. And like now there are people that you don't even have to talk. You can create an AI avatar to do the conversation for you. And I just sit there and my clients are asking me about that. And I was like, you know what? Would that affect what I'm doing for you? For sure. But here's the thing. What I think is the most powerful thing is anecdotes and stories. Like, and that's what I'm always doing. When I'm teaching people, I'm tying it into my own experience and like saying, you know what? We're going to talk about financial ruin. Let's talk about the time that I've spent this much money on. You know, that's the type of thing that's kind of authentic. And, you know, I'm sure AI has come some great experiences, but AI never bought a Green Man outfit because they thought that they were going to be able to make a music video riding a Green Man outfit through the city, only to realize that that Green Man outfit doesn't chroma key that way. And you're just a weird looking green person sitting on a motorbike.
Yeah.
AI's never done that, but who has done that? I have. I have ridden a motorcycle around the hot Ho Chi Minh City in the summertime, getting blasted while people honking and look at me like I'm crazy. Yeah, AI did not do that.
And the reason that story lands is because it's not vague, right? It's really concrete. There's no generic framing. There's a groundedness that you can't fake in authentic communications. And, especially in social impact orgs, there's always this, do we have our CEO or our leaders up on camera? Do we have the stakeholders that we're working with or our service population? And it's like, no matter, you always are going to have a message and who is the best messenger for that? And it's the person who's closest to it. So if you're talking
Yeah.
about the impact of your services, then it's absolutely that person, that stakeholder that's getting the services, that's benefiting from the mission of the organization. And if it's from ways of working and collaboration and how the work gets done, then it's your leaders. And so, yeah, I think that the more that brands feel comfortable leaning into authenticity and the folks that are closest to the work, they're going to be who wins this next, generation of marketing.
I love that. And I love that there was once there was this golden era in the early YouTuber space. I remember Casey Neistat did this video, and I still love Casey, and he was like the granddaddy now of vlogging. But there was this one video that they did, and he was getting pulled around a ski resort on a drone. And I was just like, dude, this is rad. It's this drone pulling him around like on his snowboard, and it's just going around.
Legal was not consulted.
No, definitely not. It's pulling him, go flying around. And you watch this whole video, and you get to the end, and it was just like, dude, that was so gratuitous. I don't know what they were selling, but that was awesome. Video cuts away, fades to black, and then suddenly the Samsung logo comes up on screen. And I was just like, all right, okay, I respect that. I respect you guys taking that, because there was literally no Samsung product shown in the whole video. It was just this awesome, rad video, and it's brought to you by Samsung. And I was just like, damn, I got to respect that, and Samsung's not paying me to say that, but it was just a video that always stuck in my head, and because it was organic, it was real, and at that moment, I was just sitting there going, "Dude, I would love to be pulled around And this is one of the things that I wasn't planning on touching on AI, but I want to poke at it right now. That my wife and I had a contest that she's a famous celebrity here in Vietnam. And it was for this travel agency, and they all submitted these young teams at the travel agency submitted their videos. And you know what? The one that looked the best, but we wrote it off right away, was the AI one. And there's a specific reason. The travel videos, when you travel places, you want to travel to see real things. I don't want to see AI telling me what that thing's supposed to look like. I want to see what it looks like. And it just felt forced, and it felt fake. But the guy who's actually went there, the team that went out and filmed on location and gave us all that, it was just, you can't imitate it, because it was what you want to see, which is, I think, why Gen Z has this obsession right now with all of those, the little point and click old school digital
cameras.
Yeah,
totally.
Because it's authentic. It's what you see.
It's credible. And I think that that's what we want these days.
Right? It is. It should be. I got one too. This is my mom. I went back to visit her recently, and she was cleaning out her closet, and she's like, "Do you want this? It's a little Sony about." I was like, "Yes."
Yeah.
Yes. The answer is yes.
Well, I've got my analog toy that I want to show off, which is my fountain pen.
Ooh, I'm jealous right now. I just I'm a huge analog photography guy, and I've got all these old school cameras, so I love it.
That's so cool. I think that folks that live in the digital space like us so deeply in our professional days need the literal unplug creative outlet to stay connected to this authentic, real, tangible world.
I have another podcast called Barrels and Roots. I've got a lot of podcasts. So I've got 4 that I do that are my own. And then I have others that I do for other people. And so my Barrels and Roots podcast, because I grew up in the Napa Valley, is all about wine. And winemaking to me is so fascinating and so rad, because it's all analog, man. I mean, there is some digital stuff now, but literally you are picking a grape, you are putting it into a vat where it ferments, and then you plop the thing out, put it into barrels, and then you let it sit and age, and then all of a sudden you throw it into a bottle. It's about as analog as you can get. And one of the things too is when I take a picture with my film camera, my daughter's like, "Where's the picture?" I was like, "It's inside." "Well, can I see it?" I was like, "No, it'd probably be a couple weeks to get this film developed." "Well, how do you know if the photo's good?" I don't. And that slowing down is beautiful. So let me pull it back because I have so many questions for you, and we're going to just go on tangents. I love this. What content do you think people should be making, but might not be?
Um, I think that people should be making more of this authentic content. So, and I think that a lot of content exists purely to signal seriousness. And I think Samsung is a great example of the yes of what you should be doing,
Yeah.
right? So they're not talking about the specs of the product that created this and how their labs are the most pure, and everything's just the technology is up to speed, right? That's not an actual day-to-day experience that most people are having. And I think that many brands still haven't made that leap from
Yeah.
signaling seriousness to actually connecting to people's lived experience. We're still getting this, like, especially in the social impact sphere, right? We're getting polished reports, formal messaging that stays on brand, and these updates that feel like they're not really that meaningful. So I think that the content that people should be making is really human and it's really direct. And with my work recently with the Skoll Foundation, I focused on that, focused on building trust with our audience through being more human and a little less polished.
Yes.
And I was able to grow our engagement rate on LinkedIn to nearly 10% engagement rate, which was a
That's
pretty
awesome. Wow.
exciting moment to achieve because I was creating content that existed to serve the audience and the sector that was really useful for them.
I love that. One of the things that I love that you're talking about lived experience, because one of the things that I think that especially politicians are getting wrong right now is that they have their talking points, and they've had these for years. And it used to be that the media would kind of run with the talking points and the whole narrative was pushed. But now that people have their own, that have gotten social media and they're able to push back, and people are like, today we're going to talk about the carrots that are farmed in this region. And, it's like the carrots are important. And everyone's like, dude, I need a job. It's like, I'm glad that you're talking about carrots, and, I'm certain that they're great, like, what about this? And I think that, and that's a dramatic example, but I think that there's, more day-to-day examples as well of like people that are just having certain experiences, and that can we tap into that in a compassionate, loving, powerful way, because it's interesting. I had a family member that's been dealing with their own emotional ups and downs lately. And this person, we were sitting there, why are they just acting out constantly? Everyone in the family was ticked off with them. But then there was something that they said in a disagreement with another family member that I just don't feel loved. And we sat down and we were talking about this. And what we did is finally we're like, this person doesn't feel appreciated. They're getting older. Life has changed. And so for Christmas this year, we're all having like a celebration of that person. And so I got that person with my wife a new guitar. They love playing guitar. And I'll just say it's my father-in-law. Bless his heart. He's getting older and he's just feeling grumpy half the time. But
Yep.
he's an amazing guitarist. He loves fixing his motorbikes. But he's just been feeling on edge a lot with everyone and with everything. Well, why am I bringing that up? Because at the end of the day, it wasn't what we thought was the problem. It was a different problem. And that's where if you are a human being and you can have that empathy and to tune into people, it really can make a difference. Now, transfer that into a brand. Can a brand experience empathy for the people that they're speaking to? I think so. I think that brands, and maybe it's called social listening, maybe it's called active listening. I don't know what the world you want to call it, but you need to tune in and start listening to what's going on out there and what people are talking about, and because for every trend, there is something else that's going on, and so I don't know.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think this last year for the social sector was a great example of that. I mean, I was working for a foundation and they're obviously in the seat of having a lot of resources. And the social sector, especially the global development sector, experienced a huge traumatic loss in the loss of USAID.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were hugely materially impacted. Programs, I mean, it's been covered in the news, the impact that the closing of USAID is having on the whole world. And so it was a really quiet time for the foundation to, we're not going to talk about all the great work that folks are doing in such a, excited and robust way, because we understood that a lot of people are going through a really, really challenging time. And so we all have calendars, right? All of us marketers have calendars, and we need to pivot those calendars to meet what's actually happening in the world to help, make that bridge. If you're only building the bridge so far and you're asking your audience to make it the other, little bit, that's not going to work, especially in times like this.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it leads me to think about something else. Like, there are some brands that immediately feel trustworthy, and versus instantly you don't click with them. And I notice this with YouTube ads, that I'll be watching a video and some tone deaf ad comes on, and I'm just like, what is this, man? And one of the things that happens is that they wanted me to like them, but what actually happens is that I then completely turn against that thing because it didn't listen, it didn't pay attention, and it had the opposite impact of what they were wanting. And so what I find, and I try to do with my own brand, is to pay attention to the stories people are telling and to what people are talking about. For me, in having a podcast and, the podcast that I do run, I try to pay attention to what people are talking about. And one of the things that I noticed is that my followers are trying to find solutions. So if I have a podcast and people are coming onto my podcast, well, or listening to my podcast, they're listening for some type of reason. And generally, they're seeking answers. I would love to say that my podcast is for all the super rich people, but actually, my financial podcast is not. It's for people that are trying to figure it out, people more like myself. And by being authentic and telling those authentic stories and those vulnerable stories, and I think that's something that's always a very powerful part of it for me, is that by being vulnerable, it allows me a better ability to connect with people and to come across as authentic. And also, for me, it's always comedy. As a boss, I have a team of editors that work for me, and I'm fun, man. I come in and we joke all the time. We are laughing, but we get work done. But for me, they trust me entirely because A, I'm authentic, and B, I'm vulnerable at times, and C, I'm funny as hell. And that
and humble.
I don't know about that last one, but all the rest of them I can say yes to. So, what can you do? Let me ask you this. What's one content format that consistently creates depth and loyalty, not just views?
All right. My hot take here is a well-designed carousel post can do both.
Okay.
All right. Both.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a false dichotomy to trade off like that depth and loyalty for reach. I think that it's possible to do both, because at the beginning of your carousel post, you might get a little broad awareness.
Yeah.
You get the people who are interested in just that little bite, right? In communications, we talk about the bite, the snack, and the meal, the different sizes of depth that people are interacting with your content in. The people who are just interested in the bite, they go for the first couple slides and they're like, okay, I'm good, I'm full now. And the people who are hungry for more, they go deep, they go all the way, they maybe save it. And so I think the carousels let people slow down just enough to build some understanding. You can introduce the concept, you can show some trade-offs, you can guide people kind of through step by step, creating that clarity that we talked about like at the beginning of our conversation.
I love
So,
that. And
yeah.
carousels are one that I'm always overlooking, so I love to hear that. Well, let me ask you this: how can creators tell when they're educating versus just talking?
I mean, I think you hit on it just a couple minutes ago in talking about solutions.
Yeah.
What confusion does this content resolve? If you can't answer that in one sentence, then your idea, your content, no matter how good it sounds, it's not ready for prime time. And we've all had that where we get
Right.
really invested and, oh, I have this content idea. It's going to be so good. And you get to the end and you're like, wow, I missed the mark on this. Am I going to go back and re-edit? Am I going to reshoot? Am I just going to trash can it? So like I learned this actually in one of my other past lives, as I like to call them. I was a birth doula, which
Okay.
is someone that helps families during the childbirth process, preparation, labor, and then welcoming the child. And I found if someone left a conversation with me more calm, more clear, able to advocate for themselves, less, and I did my job. If they left feeling overwhelmed, right, I'd given them too much information, I wasn't meeting them where they were at, or dependent on me, then I hadn't done my job. I hadn't educated them.
Yeah.
And so I think that content follows the same thing. Like you want people to leave feeling really clear again about what they can do now, not overwhelmed.
I love that. And one of the things too that I tend to think about is that when we're talking about all of this, like the authentic side versus, kind of scripted, because it's easy to see through someone who's just saying it, you know? Uh, I watched again the movie this weekend, Little Miss Sunshine, and I love that movie. For people who haven't seen it, go
Yeah,
out
no,
and
I've seen it. It's been a long time. A deep cut.
so good, right? The father is trying to sell the 9 steps or 8 steps or whatever, and he's like sitting there and he's like, "That's it, you're a winner. Now that's step number 5 or whatever it is." And there's this one point where he's going to Sedona to see something Grossman, Scott Grossman, or whatever the guy's name was. And when he gets there, and the guy first of all, there was a whole bunch of people from Breaking Bad in that show that I did not realize were in there. Like
Okay.
Bryan Cranston was the guy that was telling him. And then when he gets pulled over by a cop, it's the guy who plays his brother in Breaking Bad, who's also a cop.
Oh,
There's like a whole bunch of Breaking Bad like tie-ins, and I was just
okay.
like, oh my goodness. But when he's talking to him and he's like, no one picked up on this idea that you had because it's you. Like, they don't see you. They don't believe in you. They don't know you. It's not about what you're saying. Your content might be great, but if you are not authentic and they can't connect to you, then you're going to have some problems,
Yep.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
What's the fastest way to test whether an idea is actually worth going at or just something to like let go of?
I mean, I'm learning from every piece of content that I create. I have the point of the content, right? What am I trying to do with this piece? But then I have the secondary part, which is what am I trying to learn from this content? About a year ago, a little more than a year ago, I did this campaign, and it was a big campaign. We were laying out our theory on how social change happens, right?
Wow, that's big.
We published almost like a mini book about it. It was a big deal. And we were going to do a long tail campaign. This was going to stretch for at least 6 months. And I took the first phase of that campaign, and I had some good solid goals for it. But I also said, I want this part of the campaign to teach me about what the rest of the campaign needs to be about. So
Yep.
we kind of did a broad spectrum. We did ideas, voices, partner organizations, um, geographic areas, and we kind of really saw what was resonating with our audiences. And then we used that to inform the second, third, fourth, fifth parts of the campaign. Some people might call that launch a failure. It certainly didn't perform in the way that we had hoped that it would. But what happened is over 6 months, that campaign outperformed
Wow.
beyond our wildest expectations because we understood what our audience was looking for, how they were engaging with things, and we really leaned into that to give them the content in the format, in the depth, in the visuals that they were looking for.
I love that because there's a couple things there. You're speaking to people in a way that is connectable, And to
Trying.
me, every time that I tried to do something that, like, I don't know, I found that when I feel like people are talking to me instead of I had this teacher. I'm going to rewind and connect it to a different thing.
Okay.
Because I remember that I had a teacher that talked about making the world a better place. Went out, talked big. And then the guy went home on the weekends and just sat there, right? I had another teacher who talked about making the world a better place. And every weekend he was organizing get-togethers. Every weekend he was taking students out to pick up. And it was like everything. Like we would go clean a beach. We would go pick up trash on the side of the road. We would go help people. We would go distribute food. Now, which one was a better motivator? Or which one was a better person? Well, they're both great people. They just had different ways of doing it. But which one had an impact? It was the person that was sitting there getting in and doing it that was always inspiring to me. And I think that, again, how do we take that type of same thing and put it into a campaign? Because sometimes you might have a great idea, but then the return on it isn't that great, Maybe it looks great. Maybe it's like, you try to do it and then it just falls flat versus something like the Dr. Pepper thing, seems like it's not that big, but then it just takes off. So I don't know. It's hard to know what is worth pursuing, but what for me has always been a litmus test is it getting people out to do stuff? Are you creating, like the two professors, both of them talked, both of them were doing great things, but one of them was getting a return on their investment. One of them was getting people out there to return on the action. And so, I don't know. I've always felt like when I start trying to ask that question of, is it worth pursuing? I think about, am I getting people to take action? Am I getting people to do, that's it. It's the action.
How's the engagement? Are they sharing? Are they liking? Are they commenting? And look, the engagement at the beginning of that was not great. But we took that first phase rather than saying, well, we're just going to carry on as we had planned. Instead, we took the first phase, we learned from it, we built upon it, and we figured out how to get that engagement to well above what we were hoping for. So I think that, you have to take a learning attitude with all of this.
I love that. I love the idea of taking a learning attitude. I'm a black belt in Japanese style jiu-jitsu, which is very similar to judo.
Wow.
And I went and I was taking a different martial art, and I was going to take a taekwondo class. And one of my friends was like, I would never put on a white belt again and I was just like, I'm not a black belt in taekwondo, man. I don't know what I'm doing. And, it's like, or I went to a Muay Thai class and I'm like, I'm not an expert in this. And it's important to say that you're not. We don't have to be experts in everything, but you just have to be willing to have an open mind and say, hey, can I sit here and figure things out? And, if you can do that, then the sky's the limit for you. Let me ask you, I want to ask you another question here. If someone is stuck at zero growth, what's the first change that you would force them to take? Not force them, that's a bit excessive, but what was the first change that you would recommend for them to take?
Strongly encourage. Okay. I think content obviously really important, but I want to go even a little bit a step before content, and that's
Yeah.
operations. I spent a
Okay.
lot of time in my career doing the marketing operations. And I think that a lot of planning ends up being focused around internal timelines
Yeah.
versus meeting our audiences, right?
Right.
I need to make this much money by this date. I need to sell this many tickets so I can book this size of a venue or book this caterers to this event. I'm not saying those aren't important, but your first priority needs to be the needs of your audience, right? So that's first. Then looking at the content level, you need to pick one audience and you need to speak directly to what their need is. I remember when I was at Attune Experiences, we were producing a luxury wellness event. And initially, our audience was everyone who's interested in wellness.
Oh man. Oh, that's a big demographic.
Yes. And then after a couple of months, I noticed that the content that was really performing was focused on connection, right?
Okay.
That makes sense. People who want to come to an event are interested in connecting with others. Duh.
Mm-hmm.
So I honed in on that. And pretty quickly, our channels grew from 0 to over 10K. I was
Okay.
pretty proud of that. It was great. I think connection's always a good thing. I think we live in a really lonely time as humans, and that's
Right.
what we're all really craving. And that's why we listen to so many podcasts because we want to hear humans like doing the thing with each other in real time. But even at a more meta level, right? Like, are you meeting your audiences where they are and helping them connect in the way that they want to connect? Even if we're not talking about wellness events, right? That's a very specific niche and demographic. But I think that connection is a lesson that I've learned over and over in my career, is that people want to see how this is improving connections between people, even in philanthropy, in climate, in democracy. How are we building bridges to connect people to ideas or institutions or a better life?
I love that. It's like there is this power to be had when you can start just figuring out what questions you need to be asking, where you need to be going, and again, what value you can provide people. Because if you're trying to provide value to everyone, you are not going to be able to. But if you can look for a certain group of people that has a pain point and you're able to speak to that pain point, you're going to be able to create some momentum there, and again, you might not even be able to fully articulate what that is. Like, I was thinking of some of the channels I watched recently, and why are they, um, what are they successful at? Like, what is Mr. Beast doing? And that's making people, and it's interesting to like think about that because you think, oh, he's not doing anything. He's just making funny videos. But Mr. Beast is addressing one topic that is really interesting. What does money control in your life? That if you had more, you wouldn't be dealing with that. And what would you be willing to do for money? I put a bowl of writhing worms in front of a person and I say, hey, would you eat that for $10? No way. No. Would you eat it for $100? No. 1,000? No. $100,000? I'm going to be eating those worms. I will eat them raw. I will put pepper on them and enjoy them. $1 million? Oh, give me a couple bowls, And I think that like, that's the type of question that channel's answering, that's what it's looking at. And I think that, if you can figure out what it is that you want to look at with people, whether it's with a mission driven work or whether it's just, was it Nick did, I can never remember the kid who does all the cooking videos. My daughter loves his stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just making cooking fun. He makes cooking interesting. And, that's powerful stuff if you can connect people to something so beautiful. So
Absolutely.
let me ask you one last question. If you had to give one rule for making content people actually share, what would that rule be?
my rule for making content that people actually share is you need to give people language for what they're already feeling, but maybe couldn't articulate.
Oh,
Yeah. And honor the fact that not everyone feels the same thing.
I love that.
So I think that like a lot of times a brand wants to say, this is the one pathway that people are taking
Right?
into our customer journey. And when you can honor the fact that we have a whole lot of lived experience out there,
Right.
you're way more successful. And I had an instance of this at Represent Us, which is the largest democracy strengthening organization in the US. And we were doing an end of year fundraising campaign. And, leadership came to me and they said, last year didn't go so well. Can we try something different this year? It was my first year. I was like, okay, I'll bring you what I have. And I realized that our two kind of core audiences were people who were really outraged and they wanted to have their outrage validated. And they wanted to be sure that the organization was as riled up as they were. And so we created a pathway for them in our end of year giving campaign that said, here's all this stuff that's messed up that needs to be fixed next year. Will you give us money to help us fix it? Right? Then we had our Hope Camp, right? When we were still in the Obama era, we still had a little bit of the glow of the hope. And we had the people who they wanted to feel really optimistic about what was on the horizon. So I did these interviews with kind of all of the top democracy leaders. And I asked them, what's giving you hope right now? And what are your hopes for this upcoming year? And so we had these two really diametrically opposed pathways that both ended in, please support our mission and give us money for this next year. So I think, and people shared it a lot. That was one of the main drivers. We ended up having a 3x growth in fundraising.
Wow.
And it was because we recognized what people were feeling, and then we gave them a tangible next step to drive that feeling into.
Yes. I remember a couple things. I had a professor at my school that was not listening to the students. And this person was talking about how only one group's opinion and needs were important and just completely invalidating the rest of the class. And finally, we as a class came forward and we said, you are not seeing us. You are not seeing everything in here, and you're villainizing one group of people. Like, there's no need to do that. We are here we all have learned experience. We all have beautiful experiences. We all have difficult experiences. And what happened was this cathartic moment where everyone was able to voice, and then we were able to kind of heal and find some action plans. And we were, spoke to the professor, and the professor said, you know what? I might not be the right professor for this class. And it's like, this is something, and it was but it was good. And it wasn't in a bad way. It was like, this person stated their experience was for this, but this class at my school was actually needing to be this. And yet we were like, yeah, you might not be a fit for this class, but you should be teaching what you're teaching in another class. And it was this, but what happened, what it all came down to was everyone slowing down and actually having dialogue. And, and so when I talk about content, are you able to create a piece of content that gets people speaking in a way that is positive and creates dialogue? Certainly there is the whole shock angle. We have people who use that a lot, but it doesn't always create the dialogue that helps further something. Might stir things up.
Right.
But for me, I think the dialogue's important.
That's an easy route, right? We are, again, like biologically trained towards tribalism.
Yes. Yes.
And Rachel Kleinfeld, who's a Carnegie Institute for Peace fellow, she talks a lot about this. How we have to overcome millennia of
Right.
tribalistic us versus them thinking to be able to create situations where we feel safe enough and comfortable enough to engage meaningfully with people who have different ideas,
Yeah.
and that our job isn't to be right. And
Mm,
that is a really humbling thing, right? Your professor's job wasn't to tell you all that you were wrong. It was actually to create a connection and create those bridges. Yeah, I think that the more that we can think about widening our messaging to appeal to people in a really no nonsense, basic way that
right.
doesn't light up those tribalistic feelings, that's the special sauce that
I
will
love
get
that.
us through this dark time.
I love that. If you could go back and help yourself learn one thing about creating content that you didn't know in the past, what would you like to give yourself?
Oh gosh, I am a perfectionist, and I think that the more that I could tell myself that um being messy is actually, I mean, the message I gave to brands is also the message I need for myself, that creating content that's messy and maybe imperfect is just, it's a learning opportunity, and you should keep going.
I love that. I love that. Keep going. Well, that's our mic drop moment right there. I'm going to end the recording. But first of all, where can people find out more about you?
Yes, my website is saralynnfinn.com, SaralYnnFinn.com. And I'm pretty active on LinkedIn.